My name is Wade Ledbetter. I've been in the antique junk business quite a while. I've seen a lot of it go and come. I've learned things every day. But what we're going to have to do here today is tell a story that's probably a true story, but I can't promise you that every word of it is true. I'll do the best I can with it.
What's up, guys? Matt Ledbetter with the House of Folk Art. We are back in the auction gallery, and we really haven't been here in a while. We've been on location, and we've been at the gallery, at the home gallery, but we're back at the auction gallery, and I am here again with the notorious door knock picker who really reigned. I mean, his reign was from about 1975 all the way to 2018 as one of the best pickers in North Carolina in the Southeast. Wade Ledbetter, ladies and gentlemen. We're back with him today, and he's got a story that he wants to tell us.
Well, today I'm going to talk to you about a story that I want to get told, and I hope it gets into somebody like it got into me, and I've carried it all my life, really, since the early 70s. And I'll be skipping about, you know how I am. I mean, I don't know if I can make sense with this or not. But the story starts with a family that lived right in this area right here, just right across the interstate. And the dirt driveway that went down to the farm to the left is now the driveway to the entrance to the main hospital that's over there now. So to give you an idea where this story...
So the land was valuable. It got sold to the hospital, and they built the hospital.
Yeah.
Used to be a cow farm.
What happens?
Got it.
Yeah. Now, you messing me up when you say things like that.
Just let you talk. Got it. I want to hear the story, too, because I don't know if I know this.
I don't know if I've shared it with you or not, because it's a little bit far out. But there was a family... Now, if you can picture this now, you go back to the farm on the dirt road, an old Alamance County house that had been there 200 years, and one family, the Krauss family, living in it. It had funneled down to the old man and his son, Glenn, and his daughter.
What year is this? What year are you in when this is happening? We need to know.
When what's happening now?
When they're living there still, it had funneled down. What year?
Well,
it's 2025.
The
was
man
this 19?
Was born there.
I get it, but is this 1985?
No. This is way back before I even get involved in this story.
Okay.
How I'm talking about it.
Got it.
I'm just telling you that old man Krauss had a son and a daughter that survived and lived. He had more children, but they died. It's like things happen, and but the family funnels down to them, and all this 500 acres of land and everything. It's just right across the interstate, and I want you to understand about this house. To me, it's very important. The ceilings were 10 foot tall in it. I've been told this by people like R.C. Peeler, who is former pastor of St. Mark's Church. And then Carol Peeler, his son, who was educated. And I know all this is true stuff. And so, is it getting to you? Now, the Krauss family lived very primitive. There was no electricity except in one or two rooms of that big house. It was huge. It was all heated by wood. It was clocks running for time and everything else that would be in a home, that everything was cooked on a wood cook stove, and the family lived there. They never did change. Now, what I want to talk to you about now is a clock. a clock that was in that old house. It stood around 10 foot tall, 9 to 10 foot tall, and it was very wide, and it was quite a clock. The clock, when he struck 12 trains came out of the clock and circled and stopped when it was 12 o'clock. If it was 11 o'clock, 11 trains came out. I'm talking about the engine, the tender, and all the cars. That's the way it was designed to do. If it was 8 o'clock,
8 trains came out.
that you got it.
What came out when it was 1? The engine?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, the clock had bells in it, it had whistles in it, and it had its own sound, gongs and all that struck the hour. It was quite a clock. Right here in Alamance County. You say, well, how did a clock like that get here? Well, I don't really know that answer because the family had the clock in the house when they were born. The old man I'm talking about, and of course the daughter, his daughter and his son, and who I ended up getting some information from because I ended up knowing him. I never knew the old man, but this story goes back, a long ways. But this clock was very important, and there were a lot of important people in the United States at the time. That this was back in the 40s, 1940s, I am talking about now. There was a museum. I think it was in Detroit, and it was owned by Henry Ford, Model T man that started Ford Motor Company. Well, he didn't only do the car thing. When he made his money, he collected. And he had sent people down to Alamance County because he knew the history of early settlement stuff, and he was interested in that for his museum. So he sent people down here to find some of the items, which, pottery and things like that were used back in that day. He was familiar with Alamance County. Well, he'd heard about this clock, and so he sends his buyers or pickers to the Krauss house. They knock on the door, and they tell old man Krauss that they're interested in buying that clock. And he says, well, the clock's not for sale under no circumstances.
This was in the 1940s.
Yeah.
You were born in 52, so you're not here. All right, go. They know nothing about that. For all you, they know that you're standing there.
No. I've already said that I'm not standing there. I don't come into this till later.
It's important to know that he's born in 52. Yes, go.
Who was born in 52?
You.
51.
51.
Here we go.
All right, and listen, you don't have to yell. Talk.
Now that,
you can talk into the mic. You don't have to yell.
and you can imagine 3 people standing there from the Henry Ford's museum with money in their pocket, looking at the clock, because this clock's on the back porch or back door, and they're standing there looking at this huge clock, and it's sitting there running. It never gave any problem. And it strikes an hour, and the trains come out and blow their bells and whistles and stuff, and it just blows their mind. They offer, in the 40s, $50,000 to the Krauss man. And he said, no, I don't want to sell a clock. It's been in my family. I was born with it. I'm going to die with it. Well, they tried. They didn't raise the price any, but $50,000 is a lot of money back then. It was more than all that property and everything was even thought about being worth.
What could you buy a T model for in the 40s?
$300-400.
Yeah, 50,000.
Yeah.
Wow.
That was a huge amount of money, probably like several million now.
Right.
That you could probably, more than that, probably. But here's the thing. The old man stood tight in his heated house with wood, no electricity in the huge home, because it was a family home. Stood there with his clock and would not sell it. Well, the story is, they left.
$1.157 million today. is what it is.
People left without the clock. Now, this is where the story gets a little bit tricky. It's hard to even tell. But I'm going to skip about a little bit now because I've told you about the clock and the big offer that Ford's Museum made on the clock in the 40s. Well, we're going to go up to about 1972 now when I come into this deal. Now, because I like clocks, I will say this. My father-in-law, ex-father-in-law, and his father was the pastor there at St. Mark's Church. They could verify all this. They told me this story about a clock. I'd heard it from them, and then I'm a milkman in 1972, and I can still smell the smoke and see it coming out of that chimney, that flue of that little house that they finally built and moved into, the sister and brother. And I don't know her name, but his name was Glenn. And I would pull up in my milk truck, and I loved to hear his voice. And I would sit there in the driveway and wait till he come to that side door where she was in there at the end of that door cooking on a home comfort wood cook stove, gray enamel. And the smoke coming out of the chimney, I can smell it now. And it just blew my mind. And Glenn would finally come to the door, and I'd say, Glenn, what do you need today? I'm a milkman sitting in my milk truck. He said, Curtis sweet milk and a Curtis better milk. And how much your eggs running this morning? And I'd holler back, $1.35 a dozen. And he'd say, $1.35 a dozen? The Raleigh market's not but 77 cents. How can you get $1.35 for a dozen eggs? I mean, this went on every time I delivered at 5:30, 6 o'clock in the mornings, once a week for several years. So I got to know him pretty good. And like I said, I always made him come to the door and say what I just said. I Curtis butter milk and Curtis sweet milk. Now, he got his sweet milk in a glass bottle, and that glass bottle was so clean, the empty one, when he brought it back, where his sister had washed and made it beautiful. And you didn't even want to take it to the dairy and let them wash it again because you couldn't get it any cleaner. I mean, that's just the way she did things. Well, all that's played on my mind. I know that ain't got a lot to do with it.
It was a great anecdote. So what was on the milk bottle?
United Dairies.
United Dairies?
That's where I worked at. It changed over to Flavo Rich, but, yeah, this story was gone on by then. But I would finally get out and walk down to the house, and I'd see the home comfort cook stove, and I can see her now cooking on the thing. Because it was early in the morning. This was every morning. I mean, she cooked all what they ate right there on that stove.
1972.
In 1972. They were both living. And I could step in on the back porch, and I could look through the left and look into the house, and I could see over on the hearth a Lacey Holt jug. I knew what they were. They weren't worth anything back then. And I would try to buy it, of course, as a milkman. And Glenn would just tell me, that's my sister. She won't sell that. And she's keeping everything that pertains to her daddy, and we don't have much. And I said, well, why don't you have much, Glenn? He said, well, the old house down there burnt down. And I said, burnt down? I said, what do you mean it burnt down? He said, well, there was a clock in there, and Henry Ford's museum wanted it. And he sent them down here to buy it, and they offered Daddy $50,000 for it, and he wouldn't sell it. And they came back, burnt the house down, and took the clock. I said, Glenn, that's breaking the law. That ain't no way. That didn't really happen. He said, well, that's what we think happened. Can't prove it. And I said, well, I'll tell you right now, I never heard such. I just don't believe that happened. And he said, the house burnt down to ashes. And he said, I said, well, I see other buildings down there where the house, you see the foundation of the old house. And I said, what's down in those buildings? I'd gotten to know him very well. He said, well, we'll go down there and see. Well, we went down there and scratched around. And I found a jug or two that was up under the earth a little bit. And then I found this heavy weight. I said, what is this right here? And he said, that's clock weight that went to Daddy's clock. He said, it means nothing to me anymore. The clock's gone. And I said, well, I mean, I could use that. And I gave him $10 for it. I'll never forget it. And supposedly the clock.
You gave him $10 for the clock weight of $1 million clock.
Yeah. And it was just an old cast iron thing, and it didn't have no brass or nothing pretty on it. Mm-hmm. The clock was made of beautiful wood, and it was brass. They used to call the hands gold, is what my ex-father-in-law told me. They thought the hands were gold, but they were just polished brass, and it was quite a clock. But it got gone, and. So Glenn saw what brings me into it a little bit closer is that he let me have the weight. Well, I kept it for years, and I still got it, but I wanted to bring it over here, but I couldn't find it this morning. But it's there somewhere. But it wouldn't mean nothing to you. But
okay, stop. It absolutely would mean something.
Well, go find it because it's over at the house somewhere. Is the only thing I can.
It absolutely would mean something.
Yeah, well, I'll look for 3
and whoever's
days.
got the clock, because I believe your story, the clock didn't burn. So they set the house on fire to say, oh, the clock burned up. No way, Jose. The clock is out there somewhere.
I don't know.
Is that what this is about? Is there more to this story?
Pretty much. What do you want to know? You want me to end it now?
No, keep going.
I told enough of it?
No.
I mean, I don't really know a whole lot more about it.
Okay, keep going. I didn't mean to interrupt
delivered milk there, and every time that I brought milk there, it was the same thing said. But he would take me to any of the buildings that were left, and we'd scratch around and hunt stuff. And then time went on, and they aged out. And what happened is his sister died, and I'm sorry I don't know her name. And then he was left there in that little house that they built there after the big house burnt down to live in. And him living there, and he finally aged out where he couldn't take care of himself, and so he moved in a rest home, one of these local rest homes, I guess, and left the house, and then the property got sold. And you know the story on that. The property the hospital area over there bought it and put all that complex up over there on that property. It was 500 acres at one time. And I've tried to tell you as much as I could about the clock. I mean, I never saw the clock. I wished I could have saw it. And stood there. My father-in-law saw it when he was a child, stood there in that old house, and he remembers the trains coming out and having to look way up high because the clock was so tall. And
all right, can I ask you some questions about the clock?
If I can answer them, I will.
All right, would the clock have been made in America?
No, it wouldn't. It was brought. They told me that when the family moved there on that property and settled there, the clock was brought in from where they originated from. I don't know whether it was England or Germany or what. Krauss, is that what?
German. Krauss is German.
Well, they had a German descent, I guess. But they brought the clock with them. I mean, back in that day, they traveled, people did, 200 years ago with the best thing that they had. And the clock was one of them. You could buy stoves and things like that local, and it's just quite a story. And the thoughts of that clock being stole like that, I don't know whether that's true or not. I could get in trouble for even suggesting it, probably. But
no, it's been a long time.
It's been
but
a
here's
long
the deal,
time.
guys. If you know where that clock is, because this is a real thing, we need to know about this.
Well, go to Henry Ford's museum. That may be where it's sitting there on display. That's a real museum.
I understand that, but
he collected clocks.
I don't think Henry Ford would steal the clock and put it in the museum.
Well, there you go. That's up to your thoughts. And
I mean, that's about like saying that we know who killed Benny Carter. I mean, really,
I don't know for sure if all this is true, but the Reverend Peeler told me similar story. My father-in-law told me the same similar story, and then Glenn Krauss, the man's son, who lost the clock, told me the same type story.
Just gotta fix something here.
Yeah,
It's too hot. There we go. Better.
But a clock like that would be worth a lot of money. There's no question about that. More than the property ever brought. But things just have a way of just getting away. And that's what happened there. There's no happy ending to this story because nobody knows where the clock is. And probably most of the people that have heard this story don't believe the story anyway.
Can I ask you this question? Was the house totally burnt to the ground?
It burnt to the ground except for one room back there where the evidently they got it. The fire went out, or there was a couple of pieces of furniture saved, a blanket chest. It was nothing, and a few other things. And when Glenn Krauss decided that it was time for him to leave there, that he was going to have to do something, he had an auction there, and he told me, he said, "That Lacey Holt jug you wanted is going to be sold at Daddy's auction." And I said, "Well, what are you calling it Daddy's auction for? It's your auction." And he, "Well, I live there, but a lot of that stuff like that would belong to him." And I said, "Well, you still raise chickens, Glenn?" He sold his eggs to Roy Glasgow, who owned Glasgow's Texaco there at that intersection. The store is still there. Gas house is across the street. Bojangles and McDonald's sitting right over there across the street. You know the intersection. And but Roy Glasgow bought the eggs that Glenn he always had eggs in there for sale in that store. But Glenn would get so upset because, on the milk truck, we inflated prices so crazy, things were pretty high. And $1.35 don't sound like a lot for a dozen eggs, but back then it probably was.
It's what they cost now.
Well, the Raleigh market only gets 75 cents a dozen for them. How in the world can you get that much? He just questioned it every time, and I just wanted to hear him talk, But they had an auction sale there, and my friend said, "All right, Wade," said, "you've always told me about the Lacey Holt jug, and you work with me. I'm going to another sale. You go to that sale, and you buy the Lacey Holt jug no matter what it brings." And I said, "Well, it's a blanket chest there and all. I've seen it. I'll probably try to buy that." And I did. I bought the little blanket chest for like $60. I bought the Lacey Holt jug for $50. And now that sounds like a rainbow story there, but we kept the Lacey Holt jug for a year, and down in Letford shop, and we finally sold it for $150. But that's just all they brought back then.
It's about what,
$2,500 now. They
25, now going to be 35, 45,
Yeah,
going to be 45,
don't tell them where they'll end up, and make it down cheaper. But they had that auction, and I went to it, and I stayed there all day long, and I bought everything I could buy, from fruit jars to whatever that looked like it'd been there a long, long time. Because the things in the old house that burnt down with the clock in it, there were outbuildings, barns, and smokehouses and things like that did not burn. Then they were full of stuff. And so that a little bit of that stuff survived. And the sister, before she died, she gathered much of it up and decorated her house with it that her and Glenn lived in, if you can follow that part of the story. And but like I say, there's no real rainbow jackpot at the end of this story. But I think people should know that there was a clock like that in Alamance County that was incredible, and a very wealthy man did want it and offered a lot of money for it, but couldn't buy it. So you can just all put it together in your head what you might think might have really happened. They did a very good job if they did take the clock, leaving the weight. And you say, "Weight, ought to be 4 or 5 weights to a clock like that." I only had the one. They must have took the other weights with them, but
that answers your story right there.
Well, they felt like if they left a weight, it proves that the clock was there. The other weights supposedly melted. They could have been brass.
That also proves that you think somebody stole the clock.
I believe that. Mm-hmm. I do believe that.
Yeah, you believe the clock is still out there.
I think it is. Yes, I do.
Well, that's going to be an easy clock to trace down. I mean, it's going to have trains coming out of it, one engine on one. Well, this might be a dangerous situation for you.
It very well can be, and you can't go on to what I say. I mean, I'm just telling you what I think.
Right.
And I've been told stories about it, and you put it all together, and that's what you come up with.
Right.
And it's quite a good story. I didn't tell it as good as I thought.
You told it pretty good. I was hooked.
Well, I just want the audience to understand why I got involved, and it was because I was a milkman, and I went to the son's house, and him standing there talking to me about a dozen eggs, this, that, and the other, and then taking me to the outbuildings, and letting me basically have anything I wanted. And all this was done before they had that auction sale, and. When they had the auction, they went down there to the buildings and they sold the buildings by the contents, whatever was left in them. I might have missed something. It could have been something good laying around in there, but I scratched around pretty good in all of them. And as a picker, you know.
When you were scratching around, did you have a feeling the clock might be out there? Like maybe the guy.
No, the clock was huge. It wasn't going to be out there. No way. It was wooden. It wouldn't survive. It was set on the ground. It would just rot and melt into the ground over that many years.
Right.
Yeah. But that's a story about a very rare clock that was right here in Alamance County for quite some years. The Krauss family lived there in that old family home place. They raised 2 or 3 generations of family, and it all funneled down to the last people that I'm talking to you about.
Right.
Is what
it
I
always
want
does.
you to understand. Well, yeah, every estate can be like that.
Oh.
But you can Google this kind of stuff. I don't know what Google would tell you about the Krauss family, but 100% they live there because I collected the milk rent there, the milk bill,
Right.
And I was over at the Holly Hill Mall the last time I ever saw Glenn. He was sitting there, all the old people would sit in the middle there. When the Holly Hill Mall first opened, I want you folks to know this. It was one fine mall. There wasn't one in North Carolina any better anywhere. And people used that mall because they'd never seen anything like that. And every store was full of...
Didn't Mickey Mantle open a store there?
Absolutely. And people don't believe that.
Burlington, North Carolina, Holly Hill Mall, Mickey Mantle opened a what? What did he open?
A clothing store.
Right.
And I worked at Eckerd's Drug Store at that time. But I'll get on to that in just a minute because that's quite a story in itself for me. But nothing. But I'm walking down the mall and I heard a voice, and it was Glenn's voice. There goes that boy that broke that Lacey Holt jug at Daddy's sale. He paid $50 for it. And I turned around and Glenn was sitting over there with a girl. I mean, he was 80-some years old, but he had him a pretty woman with him. He was older too, and we all love women, and he did too. And he was sitting there, and I said, "Hey, Glenn, how you doing?" I walked on. But now, as far as Mickey Mantle, I mean, I'm sitting there at Eckerd's Drug Store, cooking and serving coffee because some of the girls would lay out in the little stand there that Eckerd's had. They had a serving place. They'd serve a steak. We'd make hamburger steak. Good food. Breakfast plate, this, that, and the other, and coffee. Well, I looked up and I sat Mickey Mantle at the counter wanting some coffee, and I didn't say much to him. Somebody said, "That's Mickey Mantle." I said, "Well, what's he doing here?" And I'd always heard of him. And he said, "Well, he's opened a store right up the mall there."
What year was this?
That would be 1971, probably. Check it out. 72, maybe. I don't know. It'd be in the early 70s because that's when I worked at Eckerd's Drug Store. And but I would go up to the clothing store, and he'd be in there, and he was promoting it, and he stayed in there for several weeks. back and forth, back and forth. And then he disappeared, and you didn't see him maybe once every now and then. He'd come back and sit there and sign baseballs. And he threw me a baseball one time, and I give it to somebody. I didn't want it. I felt like I knew him pretty good. And we weren't on first name basis. I'd call him Mickey, but he didn't know my name. I mean, I'd like to say that he did.
So you talked.
He knew I worked at Ecker's drugstore.
You spoke to Mickey Mantle.
Yes, I did.
Wow, that's pretty cool.
Well, it's
I don't
true.
think I really put that together.
Well, he had gotten some age on him, and actually, the old boy didn't live much longer than that store. But check it out. There's got to be reference on that.
Yeah.
That not just taking my word for it, but I remember it well. That
Burlington, North
he had
Carolina.
a beautiful, he had a beautiful line of clothing, sports shirts and stuff like that. It wasn't about baseball, but it was
sports coats, formal.
Well, just nice shirts that a sportsman would wear and stuff. And they wasn't just shirts; had everything. I guess they sold socks and everything else. But, it was always a showcase full of Mickey Mantle stuff in there. I remember looking in it. But I don't know. Back in that day, it just didn't excite me that much. He was still living. And I knew some of the stories about him and Roger Myers and this, that, and the other. But he talked about some of that if you asked him. He talked about anything he wanted to. He's a good, real fine fellow. I mean, he didn't say anything out of the way. I'll tell you that now.
So all the basements and attics you went in, I only remember you really finding baseball cards one time, and it wasn't much to it. But was that when I was a kid going in basements and attics with you, that was my dream. I wanted to uncover a whole stack of
there
1952
was an attic in
tops.
Christiansburg, Virginia, that I got into, and finally got up and had to put my foot on the bath. Had a big clawfoot bathtub. You would stand on the edge of it, and the little opening, you'd move the board and crawl in there. And they let me go in there, and that was one of the best true attics that I'd ever been in my life. And I went there several times. But on the floor, there was baseball cards. There was those Piedmont cigarette cards. The one that the valuable Babe Ruth card would be.
Honus Wagner, T206 white border, 1911.
Well, there was some good cards in that set, and they were scattered about. I gathered all of them up, but that I could find. But I was more interested in all the toys. There was a piano player playing, and little Abner's, toys like that were worth a lot of money. And I was trying to find all the pieces of that, and they were mashed flat where people had crawled in there and looked at stuff and all. But I got a lot of stuff out of there. But I think that was probably some of the best baseball cards that I ever got. But I never got one that I could get a lot of money for. The ones I got brought good money, but I can't remember how much or anything. But
because you just sold picking Monday through Thursday, sell it on Friday. You just sold it at the local auction.
And old Jim, whatever his name is, a toy man, trained man, he said, "Well, you don't have the chair, the little Abner here, that sit on the side of the piano." I remember going back that morning, 5 o'clock. I was up and going back to Christiansburg, asking them if I could go back up in that attic, and I found the little chair.
Wow.
Yeah. That went to that toy. And the whole thing didn't break. It brought about $500-$600, something like that. But nowadays it wouldn't even bring that. But
eBay killed everything.
Yeah, that's another story too. But that was a great attic, and I really got some good stuff, and it could have been some real good stuff in there if I could have just found it, but I didn't find it. But I went back several times to finally they just said, "This is over." Just like they always do, But they let me back in that thing a long time. It was two sisters that lived downstairs, and they was getting tired of me tromping around up there. They said the dust from the moving around in the attic would come down through and fall through and it messed their house up, But that was a good one. And where that house was located at was just unreal. It just in a curve there, right on the front of that house was right on the road, and it was a little bit of a sidewalk in front of it, but it was just right there, and there was hardly no parking whatsoever around it, and it was one of the true old places, and boy, it was a good one. But I got a lot of stuff there, I sure did.
So at this time, had to be in the 90s. At this time, I was 8, 9, 10, 11, and I was really starting to understand.
Well, this stuff was sold at Funwood now. So
Yeah, 90 was Mebane. So you got to understand, if any of you watch Indiana Jones.
Well, you felt like you were, that's who you were, but that show hadn't come out at the time I was doing that
Right,
kind of thing,
but
I don't think.
But it did for me. If you watch, if you watch the original Indiana Jones in the very first 10 minutes when he's going after the golden idol, and he finds the golden idol, that's what getting into a basement or attic was like for me. I really had the dream of whatever I knew about when I was a kid, finding it, and it was baseball cards. That's what I was just like infatuated with, but we never found them. But if you don't mind, because you're involved in this story too, how much more time do you want us to go? Okay, perfect. I want to talk about, when I say this name, nobody out there is going to understand it until they hear the story. But when I say the name Phil,
I'd like to hear that story.
I want to talk about that.
But I want to go back to my Christian Berg house just for a minute and tell you the truth. It's no telling. The way I threw stuff around in that attic and crawled over it, it's no telling what I destroyed by reaching over and grabbing something that wasn't really worth nothing. You know, I'm telling you, that was a good one. But some pickers, and I was one of them, would mess up more stuff than they would get out of a good attic.
Speaking of that, I got a confession to make.
I tell you, man, I didn't know. It took me forever. I thought a flat iron was the golden rule. I didn't know you're supposed to be in a house looking for gold jewelry and necklaces and shit like that. I could have got a ton of it.
So I got up in an attic when I was like 19 or 20 in college, right there in Greensboro, and there was this trunk up there, and it was locked. And I thought to myself, "Oh my God, if I get inside this trunk, there's no telling what's going to be in there." It was a trunk, dome top trunk. And so I went downstairs. I said, "Ma'am, do you have a screwdriver?" I was like, "I want to get into this trunk." And the attic was real tight. I remember it being, I couldn't stand up. I had to be down. So I worked for 10 minutes to get this trunk open. Destroyed the mechanism that locked it. And I opened it, and guess what was in it? Nothing. And you know what I thought to myself? Why didn't I just pick the trunk up and shake it to see if anything was in it? What an idiot. Yeah. I just wanted to confess that. And I went down and said, "Ma'am, I got it open, but there wasn't anything in it, but the lock ain't no good no more." I told her, but I felt like such an idiot. All right, so let's talk about Phil. Can I set the stage for this?
Yeah, you'd have to, because I don't remember a whole lot about it. Phil, I wasn't his favorite person, it seems like.
You wasn't. You were not.
I know I wasn't.
You were not. Okay, so
I think he sensed that I might have had a little something against his lifestyle, but I didn't. I didn't care. But good Lord, I was laying. I said, "That's the story that needs to be told by you. Have you never told it?"
I don't think I have.
Oh, good
that's
Lord.
That's one of the stories that
you don't realize what we left.
That was one of the stories that made me in the. Nothing to do with money, because the money comes and goes, but it made me as a picker.
I thought about that, because I'm going to let you have the floor sometime, but you knew a little bit about certain little vases and things like that. But what you didn't know, what was the most valuable thing in there,
the books,
was all those books that were first editions from the 1500s.
Well, then why didn't you buy them? Why didn't you buy them? You were standing right there too. Why the didn't you buy them? Because you didn't know how, what?
Yeah, I didn't. Yeah, I tried to buy a handful of, but I didn't know what to do with him, and I didn't know how to approach him about that.
Anything in the house could have been bought. Anything in the house could have been bought.
They were thrown in a dumpster. So
well, you done spoiled the story.
No, I haven't.
All right, here it goes. You ready? So I can't. I'm trying to track how old I was at this point. I did not have the gym yet. I don't think, did I?
I don't know. No, I don't think.
I think I was full-time picking. I did not have the gym. So this was before 2007. So out of college in 2024, went and worked for a little bit. So 2025, I became a full-time picker, picked with you, picked with Adam, learned a lot, and this is the stage where I'm finally good enough to go on my own because
you're by yourself on this one.
I had experienced what it's like to get down in the basement by myself and reap all the rewards by myself and do really well. So I had said, all right, I'm going to go up 85. I pulled out a big map, and I said, I'm going up 85 north. I'm going to cut off right and go to Virginia Beach. And I'm going to pick that whole road. It's like 158 or something.
Yeah, speed traps. It's full of them.
I'm going to pick that whole.
I got so many tickets, and Adam did too.
I'm going to pick that whole road, and then I'm going to get up in to Virginia Beach area like Portsmouth, places like that.
58 Krauss 95, and right there at that intersection at Employer, that's where they had all the traps.
Maybe it was 95. So on a Monday, I leave out, and I probably got $3,000 on me. So I'm picking up 158. I remember the first thing I bought was these big stained glass church things. They took up the entire bed of my truck. No money, $50. Then I get into another house. I buy some bayonets. That was day one. All right, here comes day two, Tuesday. I'm spending the night. All right, I'm 4 or 5 hours away by myself. Tuesday morning, I wake up. I go picking. Nothing really happens.
And what town were you in?
Around Portsmouth, Virginia.
Yeah.
I was in and around Portsmouth. And here's the deal, folks. It wasn't an eBay thing. It wasn't I have an auction thing. It was there is an auction house that we're tied to. So I got to be back by Friday because I got to be back by Thursday because I got to set up Thursday night at the latest for the auction to happen at 2:00 on Friday. Every Friday, that's what we did. It don't matter what we got. We dumped it at the auction house, and we let the auctioneer look at it. He had a lot of knowledge, and hopefully he was going to get the money for it, which most times he did. So I don't have but a couple days to do this. So it's Tuesday. I wake up picking as usual. By 9 o'clock, I'm door knocking, buy this, buy that. About noon that day, I got into this neighborhood that was ridiculous houses. I mean, they were not the normal houses that you would pick, that I would pick. I mean, we would pick brick ranch houses. I mean, this house to put it
wealthy houses.
To put it into context. Now, I know it don't take much for a house to be $500,000 now, but back then houses were selling for $90,000 and $100,000, like nice houses. All right, to put it into context, when this house went on the market later on after this story, it went on for $825,000 back in 2007.
Front yard went down to the Chesapeake Bay.
Right. So
in the water with a dock.
It was a ridiculous house. I don't know
what
had
to cross the road to do this, but
I do not know what made me pull in. I'm by myself, 25 years old,
was the man out?
No,
outside?
No. I didn't do that. I didn't look. I did look for people out, but I was not afraid to pull in and knock on the door.
I understand.
So I pulled in.
Not necessary to talk about.
I pulled in and I knocked on the door, and this old man comes to the door, and he says, "What do you want? I don't have time for this." I remember him flailing his arms. And I said, "Sir, I'm Matt Ledbetter. I'm from North Carolina. I'm up here buying antiques." He says, I don't have time for this. Not today. I don't have time for this. That's what he kept saying. So finally I said, "Okay, I'm leaving. I'm sorry. And as I'm walking out, I look into the garage, and through the garage glass, I see these doors leaning up against a table. I see the top of the doors. So I turned back and I said, "Sir, I see you got some old doors out in the garage. I need a door for one of my outbuildings back home. Can I look at those while I'm here, please?" I said it about just like that. I got that from Jimmy Lambert, by the way. He said, "Doors? Yeah, go out there and look at the doors." Well, that was me getting into the garage. So I go out and look at it. Was an attached garage. So the big house was here. It was a little walkway, and then the garage, a little 2-car garage. So From what I remember, I walked through the door, down the breezeway to the garage. All right. The doors were there, but right under the doors were 3 clocks. So he comes out there with me, and I said, I don't think the door's big enough, but I'll pay $100 for the 3 clocks. He says, you can have the 3 clocks. I go to give him the money. I don't have time for this today. I've already told you I don't have time for this. You've got to go now. I don't have time. He took the money. I got the clock. I said, okay, can I come back tomorrow? He said, because I buy other things. I'll buy stone jugs. I'll buy paintings. He said, yes, come back tomorrow. Come back at lunch. All right, well, it's lunchtime on Tuesday. Well, I still had a whole day of picking. And for all I know, I'm going to come back tomorrow. He's not even going to be there, or he's just going to shut me down. So whatever, we leave. I don't think nothing of it because I don't know what's in the house. It's not like I'm like, I can't wait to be back. I didn't really think much of it. I kept picking. All right, the very next house I go to, I spent $100 with Phil. I still had roughly $1,800 left or whatever. The very next house I knocked on, the guy was out. He was mowing his yard. I pulled him off the lawnmower. He took me up to the attic. We're in the attic. This is Tuesday, about 2 o'clock now. We're in the attic, and nothing's going on. And I say, sir, what's in the trunk? It was a big dome-top trunk. He said, I think it's silver. I said, silver? What kind of silver? He said, I don't know. Get down there and look. I opened the trunk up, and I'm not lying. It was filled this full of Morgan silver dollars. And I'm sitting there in the attic with $1,800 in my pocket, freaking out. I'm scooping Morgan silver dollars up by the handfuls, and I'm looking up at the old man, and here I am, 25 years old with $1,800 in my pocket. And I said, sir, it's silver coins. He said, oh, yeah, I told you it was silver. I said, well, can I buy these? He said, sure, we're not doing anything with them. So I'm scooping up silver dollars, trying to figure out how the hell I'm going to buy this many silver dollars. And I'm not lying. That's how it was. This full. All right. So I'm thumbing them through my hands. This is all happening in 30 seconds. Figuring out what I'm going to do here. Am I just going to offer him $1,000 for everything? Then how am I going to get the trunk out? All right. About that time, his wife yelled up from the stairs because she didn't see me come in. We came in through the side door. She said, Harry, what are you doing? He said, oh, I'm about to sell this boy all these coins. And I'm on my knee, and I'm like, oh, God. Well, actually, I'm like, well, this is good. I don't think. She yelled in the most horrifying voice you could ever yell. I'm not going to do it because it's going to take my energy. But she said, no, you're not. I'm buying them. When I say she screamed it, he started trembling. This was his wife. He said, you cannot buy those, son. We got to go. We got to go. And so I'm sitting there. I said, all right, sir, how about can I just give you $50 for this handful? He's like, no. You can't buy any of them. We got to go. That whole experience lasted about 5 minutes, and I was out. I was down, out, boom. And I was deflated. I was just like, nobody's going to believe this, first of all. When I call Dad and tell him what just happened, got out of there. All right. Didn't have Phil on my mind. Pick. 6 o'clock rolls around, check into a hotel room. I remember talking to my college roommate, Brian. I said, because we were talking, he knew about picking. He said, well, what'd you get today? Did you get anything good? Because we were in college when that painting sold for $750,000. And we talked about that. So he understood, and he went on some picks. We loaded the gas pumps for you and Wayne that day. Remember that? So he kind of knew the ins and outs, and he's like, well, what'd you get? Did you get anything good? I was like, no, but I think I'm going back to a house tomorrow that if I actually get into, it's going to be some good stuff. That was Phil. All right. Well, my appointment is not till 12. So I wake up on Wednesday morning, business as usual. I can't sit around till 12 o'clock. I still got roughly $1,800. So I knock on doors. I spend like $200 with a guy on some trains, some Lionel trains, whatever. Time rolls on. About 12:30, I show up to Phil's driveway. So I'm like, all right, this is it. His car's here. He's here. Knock on the door. He comes to the door. Exact words, I'll never forget it. Well, I thought you had forgotten about me. No, I know I'm a little late because he told me 12 o'clock. It's 12:30. So I go in. First thing, we walk through the kitchen. And it's like a butler's kitchen. It's a working kitchen, nothing to it. And I'm looking around because, we buy glassware and all that. I got my mind on that, right? I'm in serious picker mode, like a dumb. I'm in dumb picker mode is the way I describe it now. So I'm walking through the kitchen looking for depression glass, like an idiot. Okay, he takes me to the first room, and I'm by myself. I don't have backup. Do you understand what I'm saying? I don't have anybody to rely on that might have more knowledge than me. I'm 25 years old. I don't know my ass from a hole in the ground in the industry of valuables. The very first room we walk into, there is a china closet with big Lalique crystal vases and plates with fish, embossed fish rolling all over them. Big Lalique glass. The only reason that I know that it's Lalique now is because I found out after the fact. So I'm sitting there looking with $1,800 in my pocket, and there's all this incredible stuff I don't attempt to know how to buy. The very first thing I buy is an old, I guess, 1800s green bottle. It kind of comes like this, and it bubbles out. It's hand-blown glass. I gave him $100 for it. I think it brought like $300. All right, boom. So now I'm down 1,800. I'm down to 1,700. Whatever the math is. The point is, I needed $100,000 in my pocket to really buy out of this house. I had 1,700 left. All right, I'm walking through the room. I see this little vase, and I remember this exact vase is about that tall being in Judith Miller's antique book, the exact vase. And I remember it saying $9,000 to $15,000 or $10,000 to $15,000. So I pick the vase up and I turn it over, and this card falls out. It's this little it's got typewriter typing on the card, and the card is mounted to a card stock. And it says, Solnay Pex, circa 1900, and something else. And it just rings in my head like, yeah, this is it. I saw this in the book, and I'm looking at the bottom of it. And then all of a sudden I felt these ribs that wasn't supposed to be there, and I didn't know what it was. So I'm asking Phil. I said, Phil, what about this? This is something I'll pay $100 for. He says, you can have that. You can buy it. And so I told him, I said, what is this card all about? And he says, well, that's a museum tag. And my aunt was a concert pianist, and she went overseas to play for years and years, and she was a collector back in the 40s. So before she went overseas, she sent all her collection to a museum, and they displayed it while she was overseas. Well, she stayed overseas. She never came back. She ended up dying. And one day I got a phone call from the museum, and they said, your aunt's collection needs to go, and we're switching the museum out, so please come get it. So he went and got his aunt's collection and decorated the house with it. And so that's where the Lalique crystal came from. That's where all right, we're just in one room. We haven't gotten out of this room, okay? So I got the vase bought. We walk into the next room. Paintings all over the wall, oil paintings. And then you didn't have a phone to go, who is this? Who is this? Google image. You didn't have none of that. This was 2006, 2007. Paintings on the floor. He didn't want to undecorate the house. He had already told me that. So there was a painting on the floor. I said, sir, Phil, what about the one on the floor? And he says, you know what? Let me see that, because the housekeeper hates picking that up every time she's got to dust or mop. Let me see it. He looks, and it's a painting of like a chicken and a horse, just a standard whatever painting. And I was like, I'll pay $100 for that. He said, okay, you can have it. Boom, got the painting bought. And then, so I'm looking around. He's like, none of this is for sale because I don't want to undecorate. So I said, Phil, take me to a room where there's a painting that you hate. So he's like, okay, let's go upstairs. So we're walking upstairs. There's samplers lining the wall. I ended up buying 3 or 4 samplers, $50 or $100 a piece, whatever it is. We get into the room, and he says, this is the painting you can buy. I can't stand that painting. The painting was about this big, and it was really, I had no idea what it was. It was an oil painting. It had to be from like 1850. He's just like, I don't like it. You can buy it. So I'll pay $100 for it. All right. Got that. I think that's about all I bought. We're walking down the stairs, and there was a clock, just a standard square. I don't know what it is. I said, Phil, I got $100 left. I'll buy the clock.
Oh, I hope he just got that $100 spent, and we can
Okay.
Go to sleep. You are putting me to sleep.
Well, your stories put me to sleep too,
I know.
motherfucker. All right.
You told him 20 minutes. Is this going to end?
Bottom line is I spent out. I spent all my money. I couldn't have bought anything else, and there was tons of stuff to buy. So I said my goodbyes.
When did you bring me into it?
I said my goodbyes, and I set it up to bring my dad back because he's been in the antique business for 40 years. And I was going to go back and research the paintings. I took pictures, or I wrote the paintings down. I don't know. Yeah. All right. And to research all the little vases that were everywhere because they were just wild as hell. I didn't know what I was looking at. It was over my head. All right. So I get back. The vase brought $9,000. The painting in the room brought $3,500. The other painting on the floor brought $1,000. The clock was bullshit. Shouldn't have bought it. Whatever. I had hit. I was telling John about the house.
You had some money, didn't you?
John said, You're in a once-in-a-lifetime house, Matt.
Yeah.
You're in a once-in-a-lifetime house. You got to go back. I said, I know. I got it set up. Me and Dad are going back Monday. All right. So I done got into the books. I remember what some of this stuff was. I knew that the vase on the piano was an Almeric Walter Pate de Vey vase circa 1915, worth about $8,000. Okay. I knew what this was and this was and this was. So I'm going back with Dad. We go in. And you're right. I mean, he did not. This is the very next week. He didn't really mesh with you as good as he did me. Whatever. So we bought all the carpets. It was like 14. It was like 14 carpets, and he had already said, "Hey, I take these carpets to get cleaned, and while they clean them, they appraise them." So anyway, he let us have the carpets for like $100 a piece. We started a list. We started writing things down. I offered him $500 for the $15,000 vase. The Almeric Walter Pate de Vey vase. He said I could buy it. So I wrote it down. I said, vase on the piano. That's what I did. And I didn't tell him, oh, this is an Almeric Walter Pate de Vey. Can I buy it? I said, what about the vase on the piano? $500. He said, yes, you can buy it. So I said, piano on the vase, or vase on the piano. We make our buys. We probably spent $3,500, whatever we did. All right. We go to add it up. He says, well, where's the vase? I don't see the vase on the list. I said, well, it's right here, vase on the piano. He says, well, you should have put down Almeric Walter Pate de Vey because that's what that is. And I was like, okay. I mean, I was very shocked at that moment.
He called me down for being upstairs and opening the trunk full of silver.
You were in picker dumb mode, looking into cabinets. Everything to buy was right there in front of you. And yeah, he did. He got very annoyed. All right.
I didn't know.
So we did what we did, left. The vase brought $5,500, blah, 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 blah. Went back again another week. Very soon to that, went back, like 2 or 3 weeks later. Made some more buys. Left. Let it go for about 3 months. Called him. No answer. I mean, there was a baby grand piano in there with ivory keys. There was probably 50 more oil paintings. The books you're talking about, we went back and researched the books. They were all first editions, very high dollar books.
They were in foreign languages. But still, they're worth a lot.
All the Lalique crystal was still there.
But you have to handle stuff like that, right?
The furniture in the house was period, early Virginia furniture, like 1780s to 1820. And then there's no telling what else that we didn't see, like the sterling silver,
because we just full of that stuff. That meant nothing.
We never got into any of that. So 3 months later. Ring, trying to get in touch with Phil. Hey, we want to come back. Finally, we're just like, let's just ride back up there. Let's go back and see him. So we plan a picking trip. We're going to go to Portsmouth. Pull up there Monday morning. For sale. There's a for sale sign in the yard. House is completely empty.
Yeah.
And we're like, what the hell? go to the neighbor, knock on his door. Hey, what's going
He was
on?
out.
Went and talked to the neighbor. What's going on with Phil? What's going on? He goes, oh man, he died. And you would not believe the kinds of things that they set out on the side of the road.
That's crazy.
I mean, $1 million worth of stuff set out on the side of the road. And I like to believe that, please tell me that somebody came in, packed up all the stuff and took it to a storage building and then set what they thought was trash. But don't tell me that they set every item on the side of the road. Lalique crystal
Dumpster.
vases. I mean, I just...
Said they had a dumpster and they loaded it in there.
And so
all the books went in the dumpster.
did I bore him that bad that he got up and left?
Yeah.
All right, well, that was a good... Dad, I really appreciate you being here.
I'm glad to be here. You can end it. You can cut out what you want and start what you want.
I'm Matt Ledbetter with the House of Folk Art, and thank you for listening to the Pickin' Stories of Wade Ledbetter.